Hello and welcome to the Peak and Roll podcast, where we talk about all things NBA. I'm your host, Peak, and we are very excited to bring you the NBA Draft Special. It's going to be the day you're watching it is the NBA Draft. We're recording this the night before, and very excited for this. We have Jesse Hamilton, creator of Hamilton Hoops, here today. How you doing, Jesse?
Doing all right. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, one of my favorite people on here. I just want to
Thanks,
get
man.
right into it. We have a lot to talk about. So we want to talk about hypotheticals first. And I think hypotheticals run the NBA because that's all to talk about in the offseason. So we're going to talk about what would you trade the number 2 pick for, who a lot of people would say would be the number 1 pick in many other drafts.
What would you trade the number 2 pick for? So assuming the number 2 pick is, are we going off Brandon Miller? I guess it could be Brandon or Scoot, right?
Yeah, let's go off of either of those.
Yeah.
And I think you could say either of those could be a number 1 pick in many drafts over the past 10, 20 years.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Do you have any ideas? It's tough because you never know what these players are going to be. And obviously, I think Scoot, in my opinion, is the second best player in the draft. I see a lot of people saying Brandon Miller. I think it's Scoot. I think there's a lot to be desired with Scoot, especially his comparisons with Russell Westbrook, those types of players. Those are the types of players that, can turn a franchise around. So I think what you would have to give up for Scoot would be pretty hefty.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I've never been on the train of Brandon Miller going to. I think his skill set you can find in some other picks in the mid-lotto. I also think, especially with this free agent class, I know that shouldn't always be the deciding factor for who you draft. I think there's a lot of wings in the NBA right now.
Yeah.
And when I look at Scoot Henderson, like you said, the comparisons to Russell Westbrook are really what come to me. You look at him working out with Steph Curry. I think that he's a phenomenal talent that's going to be in the league a really long time. But getting into it, so we're going to talk about players you would or would not trade the number 2 pick for. So let's start with an obvious one. It's already been mentioned, Zion Williamson.
Yeah. I would trade the 2 pick for Zion Williamson. And I know a lot of people are scared of Zion's injury history. Now he's going through some off-court troubles. But put some of that aside, Zion, when he's healthy, is arguably a top 10 player. He's top 15 for sure. You give him a full season of healthy basketball he's going into his fourth season? Is that correct?
Yeah.
His
it's got to be.
I think it's 4th. Yeah. He's going into his 4th season. He's had a ton of rest. Hopefully he can keep the injury history on the back burner from now on. And at that point, Zion has the potential to be a top 10, if not higher, player in the league. So I think it's definitely worth the risk.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with everything you say. I think there's 50% of teams that would say yes, but I also think there's 50% of teams that would say no. A lot, mostly due to the fact that a lot of people say Scoot Henderson's worth a number 1 overall pick, and Zion was of that same caliber. And if you think Scoot can be everything he's cut out to be, and you add a reliable jumper to that, I think he could be a better overall player than Zion. But I think it's really hard to justify saying no to a Zion trade just due to what he does when he's healthy on the court.
Right. I think what makes Scoot so valuable. Sorry. I think what makes Scoot so valuable, though, is the fact that, like you said, it's a league of wings, right? Finding that franchise guard, it's not an easy task, right? You have to get a very high draft pick to do that. So if you're in search of a franchise guard, you need to either A, land in the top 5, or B, trade for a pick in the top 5. If you look at, like, we've talked about Orlando in the past, right? They have a bunch of mediocre, solid guards, but none of them are franchise leading guards. You need to land a John Morant, Darius Garland, who was a number 5 pick. These types of players who can kind of change a franchise. It's not easy to come by, where I think serviceable wings in the league may be a little easier to come by.
I agree with that. And I want to go back on my take about not enough wings. I think there's not enough high level like superstar elite. I mean, kind of that's all that are superstars. But I think when you look at the crop of role players, there's a lot of them. Not a lot of
which, I mean, from the wing position though, it's like you kind of only really need that. I mean, if you have a solid one guy or two guys, like if you have fill guys, you know, who can play 3 and D, and I mean the NBA's position is now, so wings can play a 2 to a 4. So I think there's more an abundance of wings compared to solid number one option like point guards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. Looking at some other players that are definitely probably not on the trading block, but for this hypothetical they are. Would you trade Darius Garland for pick number 2? Let's say Terry Rozier. Sorry about my dog.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. Would you trade the number 2 pick for Darius Garland?
In all honesty, I probably, if I'm the Cavaliers, I don't want that. Personally, I think Darius Garland fits their window better. Especially next to Donovan Mitchell, who's been in the league for a while now. Mobley's going into his 3rd year now. Jared Allen's getting a bit old. Obviously, he's not old, but, you know, he's been in the league for a little bit. I think that Garland right now is a better player, and I think your window of winning right now is going to be not extended longer, but you have a better chance of winning a championship in your window that's current with Darius Garland. But if you're building for the future, obviously you're going with Scoot, in my opinion.
Yeah, that was kind of the frame of the question. I'm glad you looked at it that way, though. So you're saying if you were to start a team today, you had to choose between Scoot Henderson and Darius Garland, would you go Scoot?
Probably, yeah. But I mean, we've only seen Scoot in G League Ignite games. Like, it's so hard to tell because Darius Garland is such a good guard. Yeah, it's really hard to try and choose between those two. So I mean, if you have a top, what is he, 10 at least, or top 7, whatever Darius Garland is, I would be very hesitant to just give that away on a guy that we don't know much about.
Yeah, you'd really have to gamble, and I think there are people who would love to take that gamble just because of the upside of Scoot. I think Darius Garland's height is a factor, kind of like Scoot's height has kind of been mentioned, but I think Scoot's overall athleticism, his starting and stopping ability, his vision, it rivals Darius Garland's vision, I would say. And you add in a whole nother facet that is athleticism. But yeah, I agree with you there.
Cool.
Okay, last player, or I guess team combo trade for the number 2 pick. Would you trade Jaden Ivey in the number 5 pick for Scoot Henderson?
So I know a huge thing that I'm a believer in is if you won 20 games the year before, you don't draft for fit, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty obvious. In this scenario, it's the same thing as like the reason the Hornets kind of wouldn't draft Scoot, because they have LaMelo, right? And they kind of want to put that wing in there and Brandon Miller. If you have Scoot and in LaMelo, how does that work? So if you have Cade and Scoot, how does that work? Right. So it's a big question, but obviously, I mean, it's tough. As a Pistons fan, I think it's pretty obvious with my jersey, your jerseys. The bias comes out here. I personally would like to keep Ivy in the 5. Just because I think that Ivy as a 2 guard has a brighter 2 guard future than Scoot would have as a 2 guard. I see Scoot as a point guard. A Ja Morant is literally just how I picture Scoot. So I see Scoot as a Ja Morant, and starting Ja in another point guard would be a weird fit.
I agree with you there.
That's drafting for fit, though.
Yeah, and like you said, if you went under 20 games, it's so hard to imagine doing that. That's why I think if Detroit was at pick number 4 and Amen Thompson was on the board, I would say pick Amen.
Yeah,
you're gonna have decisions to make in terms of what you're gonna do with your rotations and your roster building, but you can't pass up on that kind of talent that kind of has it all. But the catch is with
3 though too.
Yeah, he's 6'7". I don't see why he couldn't. Like, people say there's the big thing. This might be just me not being a super big draft expert, but a lot of people are calling Asar wing, and I agree with that. But there was a year, I think his first year in OTE, I'm pretty sure he played point because he wasn't on the same team with Amen. And then in their second year in OTE, they decided to play together for one last time before the NBA. So if Ausar can go from playing point to wing, I mean, why can't Amen do the opposite? And having playmakers all on the court is very valuable. Look at the Thunder with Jalen Williams. You have Josh Giddey. You have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah.
They make it work. You look at Chet Holmgren. He's not afraid to pass the ball either. So next year, that team is going to be lethal.
Yeah.
You add in a lotto pick.
One team that I really think of when it comes to drafting for fit or not drafting for fit when you're in a position where you've only won like 20 whatever games, the Cleveland Cavaliers, right? They have Colin Sexton. Then they draft Darius Garland. They tried to run both of them together. Obviously doesn't work out. And they made the correct pick by going with Garland. I think it's pretty obvious that Garland ends up being the better player between him and Sexton. So that's another thing where it's like they draft 2 point guards. They try to make it fit. It doesn't fit. And you end up still with a very solid point guard. So, I mean, what they ended up getting in return for, obviously they traded more than just Colin Sexton, but they traded Colin Sexton, Lowry, and they end up getting Donovan Mitchell. So, I mean, just stacking these or accumulating these solid players, no matter what position they are, is always very helpful.
Yeah. And I think a good thing to, like, basically what you just said, I would rather have 2 really phenomenal point guards than to have a really good point guard and a pretty good wing. Because at the end of the day, it's talent that outweighs everything.
For the most part.
Especially when you win 17 games. We're moving on to something new where we're going to stack the 2019 draft up against the 2020 draft, 2021, and 2022 draft. The only implication is we're only going to be ranking the drafts based on picks 4 through 10. So no Zion, no Anthony Edwards, no Cade Cunningham, no Paolo Banchero. So if you're looking at these, which one 4 through 10 would you call probably the weakest?
I think the weakest by far is when you see this stretch of Okoro, Okongwu, Hayes, Toppin, Denny Advia, Jalen Smith doesn't even play a ton really anymore. That 2020 draft class, that top 10, not great outside of the top 3.
Yeah, you could even say Patrick Williams hasn't had a great start. He's been hurt a lot. I think he has a lot of potential, and he has the potential to be a really good fit, especially for a rebuilding Bulls team if they choose to. But that's kind of based on potential and not what we've seen. So I agree with you. I would put that one at the bottom as well. I think we're going to agree on the 3rd place team here, and that's going to be the 2019 draft.
Yes.
Yes, we talked about Darius Garland. We gave him a lot of praise earlier.
And that's it. That's all that's there.
Yeah, that's all
Jared
that's there.
Culver, out of the league. Cam Reddish. What? I mean, like,
what's going on with him?
So much upside, but nobody knows what's going on with him. Rui is a bench guy in LA now. Jackson Hayes. What? Who? Obviously, we know Jackson Hayes is, but like Kobe White, backup point guard or 3rd string point guard, whatever it is in Chicago. Like,
DeAndre Hunter is their 2nd best on that list. And not to discredit DeAndre Hunter, not at all. But look at the 4th overall pick for the 2021 and 2022 draft. I mean, that's just that's what tells the picture here.
Yeah. And for the DeAndre audio Hunter, listeners out there, the 4th pick for those ones, Scotty Barnes, Keegan Murray.
Yeah. Like I said, that tells the full story there. DeAndre Hunter is not a bad player. He has a lot of upside. I think the biggest thing is he doesn't have a great contract right now. A lot of people on that Atlanta team don't have great contracts mixed along with the guys who are going to probably not get good contracts. But DeAndre Hunter's, I think people think of him as more of a defensive guy than he truly is. I think he's overrated in that regard. And he provides kind of a pretty good offensive game. But overall, like, it's not the kind of player I thought he was going to be. I thought he was going to be an elite 3-and-D guy.
Let me hit you with a pop-up question real quick, right?
Yeah.
Who has more playoff points? DeAndre Hunter, Julius Randle?
I want to say Julius Randle, but I'm guessing it's not.
It is DeAndre Hunter.
No.
Which is pretty wild, isn't it? You would have expected Randle. What?
Do you have the games played for each?
I don't, off the top of my head. I know I did it for a TikTok. I had to look that up. So I was just so surprised.
Shameless plug.
Yeah, right. I did look that up, and I was surprised he has more threes made and points scored in the playoffs than Julius Randle, which is you wouldn't expect it.
Did Julius make the playoffs before that first Knicks run? I'm trying to think. Did he make it with the Pelicans? So. Did he make it with the Lakers? Because that kind of checks out, because his first run was against that Hawks team who made it to the conference finals.
Right.
So
it's just wild because Randle came in what year?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
7. Oh gosh, I don't know. It was because he played with Kobe for what, 1 or 2 seasons, so he came in like
1 year, I thought, and then he was hurt that first year.
15 then.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I digress. Go ahead.
Yeah, DeAndre Hunter, everybody, somebody that has more playoff points than Julius Randle. So now we're stuck between these two drafts, the 21 and 22 drafts, and I think these ones are absolutely stacked. I'm just looking down the list, and I can see maybe. Okay, I know exactly who's going to be number 1 for me. So who would you say is number 2 for you?
The 22 draft is number 2 for me. And I solely do that just because they've had 1 season so far, and we haven't seen a ton from the Dyson Daniels, and Johnny Davis was regarded as the worst pick in the draft almost for where he went. So, I mean, that's my choice, and it's solely because we just haven't seen a ton from these guys.
Yeah. Johnny Davis showed a lot at the end of last year when he got a lot of those minutes. I think he had a triple-double, or he had a crazy game with the crazy stat line, that crazy reverse. You know what I'm talking about? That clip?
Yep, I remember.
It's cold. Oh, yeah. It's cold.
I remember.
But the Spurs walked away with Jeremy Sohan. He's probably one of my favorite guys. My in-laws are absolutely in love with the Spurs, and I love his hair. I'm just going to say that. That gives him points. Yeah. But you look at Shaden Sharp, Benedict Mathurin, Jaden Ivey. Like, a lot of these guys were all rookie team.
Right.
Very solid crew, but I can't put them number 1 over what we had in 21, and that's without even Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green in the picture here.
Evan Mobley.
Evan Mobley. Yeah. I look at Franz Wagner. I think a lot of people can make the case for him going top 3 in a redraft and maybe not even being number 3.
I think one thing that also helps with when you look at this one is how many of the rookie of the year players are in the 4 through 10. It's only one draft class, and it's Scotty Barnes. I think that just tells you how great that is. I mean, compared to the other ones, obviously, but LaMelo, as you see, was 3, so he's almost there. But
that is a lot of praise for Scotty Barnes. I think that's the most praise you've ever given Scotty Barnes.
It's too much praise for Scotty Barnes. It's too much.
The only negatives in this draft, maybe not even negatives, maybe not the best players in that class, would be Zaire Williams, who had a really good role in Memphis last year. I think he was benched throughout a lot of this rest of this year.
I was going to say, I didn't hear much of him very much this year at all.
Yeah, his first year, I know he was good. He was solid. Right. Davion Mitchell, one of the better perimeter defenders in this league, gave it all to Stephen Curry during that first-round matchup. I mean, Jalen Suggs a really good defensive guy.
Davion made it fun. Obviously, the whole series in general was fun, Davion or not, but the added addition of Davion just trying to clamp up Steph Curry made that super exciting to watch.
Yeah. There's a lot of defense in this tier.
Yeah. And I mean, you also look at Kuminga, some guy that we haven't seen a full potential of either.
I know he wants to go somewhere else. There's a lot of rumors about him going to Indiana.
Oh, that'd be scary.
I don't want that in. Oh, sorry. I don't want that in my division.
Yeah, no.
I don't want that in my Detroit Pistons division. They're my babies, and I don't want to see Tyrese Halliburton and Kuminga unleash. Oh.
I agree. Obviously, Josh Giddey's there.
Yeah, Josh Giddey's fantastic as well.
If we haven't even talked about Franz Wagner either, who's going to be a 20-plus point per score or point per game scorer at some point, probably next season.
I love Franz. I think we talked about him a little bit off the top, but I don't think it was much.
Yeah.
But, that's probably one of my favorite draft classes.
Yeah, same.
And that leads us to the 2023 NBA draft. And I think this draft has the potential to beat all of these tenfold. But
I agree.
That is said about every draft you ever hear about. Mm-hmm. Even when we get to next year, people are calling it one of the weaker drafts in a while. Once we get to draft night, people are going to say, oh, guy at 8 could be a stud, could be a star. It's every draft you hear. I think if you take away the top 3 of Victor, Scoot, and Brandon Miller, you still have a great crop of talent and potential. And that's going to bring us into the mock draft. And I think that's what a lot of people wanted to hear when they clicked on this video. Let's see. I think we both have number 1 pick probably locked in the same way. I don't think there's any debate there.
Come on. I think
what about number 2?
Everybody in the world knows this. Number 2. So I put Scoot. It's probably going to be Brandon Miller based off of what it sounds like, but in my opinion, Scoot is the pick.
I agree with you. I put Brandon Miller, but I genuinely think Scoot is the better player. I think I mentioned this at the top of the show or early in the show. There's a lot of front offices that really value Brandon Miller, like genuinely as a better prospect than Scoot Henderson.
I think it's wild.
I do too, but like it's tough because you hear all the criticism about it online, but I don't live in the locker room. I don't go to these scouting events. I don't live the GM's line. Yeah, I don't go to any of that crap. So I can definitely have an opinion. And if Brandon Miller gets called, I'm going to wait to see the results before I trash on it. I think a lot of people are really quick to calling the Hornets unserious. I think it's valid. They've heard. Yeah, new regime there.
Yep.
But Michael Jordan's still making that pick. That's what I heard.
Is he?
Which is weird. Hopefully he gets some insight. But like I said, I kind of want to wait to see the results before I trash on it.
Right.
But if it goes wrong, it's going to be bad. And I think that brings us to pick number 3. And I think to Portland, we both have the opposite player of what we just chose.
Yeah. We just flipped. I have Brandon Miller. But like I said, I think Miller's probably going to go too. But I flipped him because I think Scoot's the way to go there. So
yeah. And I think that's an easy pick. Either of those would fit really well. I think Portland could use the 3 and D aspect with Brandon Miller. I think Scoot Henderson and the guy, if he drops to them, he's just so good you can't pass up no matter the fit.
Your audio is flipping. It's like cutting between your mic and like maybe your computer speakers.
Oh, weird.
It was tripping for that whole time you were talking about Brandon Miller.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Which, I mean, it wasn't very long. It was only like 30 seconds.
Okay, so what would be a good jump back in spot?
Just and onto the 3 pick or whatever. And we can just talk about how we flip-flop. Let's go back to that.
And moving on to the 3 pick, we basically probably just flip-flopped. I'm assuming you picked Scoot Henderson.
No, I have Brandon Miller.
No. Oh, okay. That was my draft. I picked Scoot. You picked Brandon there. Either way, those are great fits no matter who goes to Portland. I don't think they should trade the pick because, yes, Dame, you can make him happy in other ways. You have other assets to trade, maybe not for superstars, but there's a way to make that team better. Brandon Miller's a great 3 and D guy, but Scoot Henderson's a guy you just cannot pass on if you get that opportunity.
Yeah, I agree.
Number 4, this is where it kind of gets interesting. I don't think the draft starts till 5, personally.
Yeah, I agree.
I have Amen Thompson at number 4 to Houston. Yeah. His fit with Jalen Green would be phenomenal. The most athletic backcourt in the league. I've heard a lot of people say that.
Yeah. He's
a jump shot away from being a top 6 point guard. I think you could make that case.
I mean, it's going to be interesting once you get to, like you said, that the draft really starts at 5. And Amen Thompson, I think, is going to fit in great in Houston. Hopefully, I think that Ime can bring a little bit of a culture switch there as well, because I think they're just a bit immature. I mean, I think that's obvious. I think the Pistons are immature. I think the Magic are immature, but I think that Ime can bring in a little culture shock, culture switch there. I think that Eamon can come in there and also help with that too.
Yeah. And the thing I like to say about bringing in a new coaching staff to help out with that kind of things is you're not just paying to get the head staff, or I just say you're not just paying to get the head coach, you're paying to get his entire staff there.
The staff, yeah.
Yeah. So not the head staff.
And something
you're paying to get those guys in there.
Right. Exactly. I mean, that's what we did with Monty too. We got Monty's guys in here in Detroit, so that's big. But something else with Eamon as well. He's coming into the league at 20 years old, right?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's older than most rookies come in the league. I mean, if you look at Brandon Miller, he's going to be coming in the league at what, 18, 19, whatever that is. He's coming in a bit older. I think he's 20 and a half, actually. So maybe a little bit more maturity coming from him there as well.
Yeah. And that's always a good thing, especially when you're picking those raw prospects, is I think when people think of, that's a good point, because when people think of older raw prospects, they kind of think they've already reached their potential. Yeah. When in fact, you still have 4, 5, 6 years to develop. And if you're passionate about developing, I mean, it also comes with hard work. And if you have the right staff around you, you're going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
I think he has all the tools to do it. And pick 5. This is where I think there's been a guy who's been penciled in by most mock drafts. I think there's fit issues with everyone. Good and bad. I think there's positive fit traits with all these different guys you could pick. But again, this is where the draft starts because it could go anywhere. Who do you got?
Yeah, so I have Jarris Walker here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big Cam Whitmore guy, but I think what we heard last from Cam's workout with Detroit was the fact that it didn't go as well, I think, as some people expected. And that's where I see Jarris coming in and kind of being that, like, it's almost just less of a gamble if you go with Jarris Walker. It's like the safer pick, in my opinion. I think Cam's potential is insane, right? He's an amazing athlete. If he can get his shooting down, if he can get his defense, get that a little bit better. But I think that Jarris Walker is just the safe pick there for Detroit.
Yeah, I think he has a lot of upside. With us, he has a high floor. A lot of people think he doesn't have as high of a ceiling. But with his skill set, he has the potential to become elite in certain factors of the game.
Yeah.
And if not elite, then very good at a lot of different parts. I mean, like you said, the playmaking, a lot of people call him a bigger Isaiah Stewart, which I think is generalizing by his size and how he looks, because he looks a lot like Stewart with the hair, the body shape. He has a lot of skills that would be very transferable to being on this Monty Williams team with Cade Cunningham and Ivy and Duran around him. It's all about finding the 3 of the future, in my opinion.
I agree. Also, something else about Cam too. I've seen comparisons, when you draft guys who rely a lot on their athleticism, somebody like that, Stanley Johnson. You rely on a lot of your athleticism, and that's where you kind of took over in your high school days, a little bit in your college days. Not saying that Cam can't pan out at all. I think for the last little bit, Cam was my pick at 5, personally. And I think I told you that as well, because I told you to try and convince me of Jarris Walker. And just the more I think about it, the more I think Jarris is probably the safer pick, but Cam is the pick I would like to see almost. But I think Detroit goes Jarris.
Yeah. I'm going to break the mold a little bit, because I think when I picked Brandon Miller at 2, that was a lot of what I heard versus what I would like to see. I'm going to change to what I want to see at 5, and that's Anthony Black. He is my favorite prospect in this entire draft class. The way he sees the court is Cade Cunningham-esque. And I know the big thing is he is a point guard, but he's also big-bodied. He's a guy who can play on the court with other facilitators. His shot still has some work to do, but I believe in him in his fundamentals as a catch-and-shoot guy, playing off of Jaden Ivey, playing off of Cade Cunningham, but also being able to create easier looks for both of them is something that I value in a prospect, because at the end of the day, I don't want a prospect that becomes better with Cade Cunningham. I want a prospect that will become better, but also help Cade Cunningham. And not just by inflating his assist numbers, maybe like a Cam Whitmore would, but by helping Cade get easier looks. And I think Anthony Black is that guy. Okay. What I really think they would do, though, is Asar Thompson. That's what I've been hearing. And that brings me to pick 6, because I don't think Asar goes past 6. I think Orlando has to take him, even though I think they need a guard. I think Asar Thompson fits what they need because of his skill set with playmaking, his dribble, his handle, his vision as well. I like that fit there.
I have Asar here as well, and I did have Anthony Black here before. But then I thought, Markelle Fultz, serviceable guard, very good guard. Cole Anthony, good guard. Jalen Suggs, good guard. They have enough of the good guards. And in the chance that, Anthony Black did just turn into another good guard. They got 4 there now.
Yeah.
Where I think Asar kind of fills in a maybe missing spot for them. Throw him in at the 2.
Yeah.
So I think he's a good fit there.
I love that fit for him, especially playing off of a Franz, off of Apollo, and also helping make their lives easier.
Yeah.
We are now on number 7.
Yeah.
And this is where mine changes from yours, because you had Jarris at 5. I have him at 7. Okay. I think Indiana, what they need is big bodies.
If they get Jarris.
And I know I don't want to see him. I don't want to see him in the East, but for draft
they got Jarris and Kuminga. That'd be wild.
That'd be a very, very solid lineup, because they probably play Kuminga at the 3, Jarris at the 4, and everything you mentioned about his fit in Detroit, I'm going to mention about his fit in Indiana, because him playing off of Tyrese Halliburton while also helping Halliburton score, him helping Benedict Mathurin, Andrew Nembhard's a great name too, playing next to Miles Turner, to where that has the potential to be the best defensive front court in the league, while also both being able to have a jump shot. Let's take that back a little bit, because I think that's underrating the Cavs for being the best defensive front court. They'd definitely be top 5 pretty early.
Yeah, that team would be set up beautifully if they got Jarris. I still think they would be set up if they went with Taylor Hendricks, who is what I have there. Obviously, not much of the outside scoring ability, still a bit raw when driving to the basket. But what Taylor Hendricks brings, hustle, defense, and another rim protector, as Miles Turner is one of the best rim protectors in the league. That backcourt duo or front court duo, it's up there as well with Jarris. It's just Jarris offers a bit more on the offensive end than Taylor Hendricks does. Doesn't mean he can't ever get there.
Yeah, I've been listening to Locked On Pacers podcast. I've been listening to anybody who covers the Pacers about what they're going to do. And their big thing is they're going to get either one of those 2 unless they happen to go 5 and 6, which I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, never know. It's probably not going to happen, though, obviously, the Paolo and Wendell there in Orlando.
Yeah, there's a lot of options for this draft. And number 8, what do you have at number 8?
This is where I have Cam Whitmore falling to. Yeah. Who number 8?
I'm going to have Cam go there too.
Again.
Washington.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Because I think from what I've seen, Anthony Black was somewhat the pick there. On other mock drafts, I have Cam falling here. The sole reason is because if Cam Whitmore is there, you take him. I don't think you let him fall past you.
Yeah, that's a tough one there. I know they've been huge on getting Anthony Black along with Utah. They're in pursuit, and that's going to be something we talk about in a little bit. But I agree with you. Passing on Cam Whitmore is tough, especially a guy who, he's a guy who could be the bright light in a rebuild. It's going to be a hard rebuild for them. And he's a guy who can put the ball in the basket. And Anthony Black on the Wizards vibes gives me kind of like rookie or Michael Carter-Williams vibes. A really solid player, but I don't know if he's ever going to be a superstar. But I don't think that's a great fit. I think, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. So I'm going to challenge
we're
that.
Both Whitmore.
If that's all right.
Okay. Yeah.
Let me challenge that, right? So you were talking earlier about drafting for fit, right? And if you're the Wizards right now, it's not the time to draft for fit at all. You're about to lose Kristaps. You're probably going to lose Kyle Kuzma. I'm assuming he's not going to stay there, right? He opted out of his contract. Yeah. He's probably gone. No, Kuzma.
Oh, Kuzma. I thought, okay. Yeah.
But Kristaps is probably going to be dealt. And then after that, you lost Bradley Beal. Johnny Davis is your Johnny Davis, and Denny and Kisper are your young guys.
That's great young core.
Yeah, I mean Anthony Black. If you don't think he fits well with them, with literally no other pieces, how does he fit well in Detroit? And especially if you think that if he can't really live up to being a superstar or a star, then why would Detroit draft him at 5 when you have people like Jarris, Cam, Asur, who have possibly star potential?
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's just challenging when you're Anthony Black. You're Anthony Black, but obviously you didn't pick him in your mock. You just said that's somebody you wouldn't mind seeing in Detroit, which is fair. I think we both have guys who both have guys who are favorite prospects for us.
Yeah. So,
that's just me challenging.
That's a good. Never do it again on this show, or else you're off forever.
Yeah.
Number 8. Did 9. I even say who I'm picking in 8?
Oh no, you didn't. I assumed you were going with Cam because you said. But go ahead.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Number 9.
I was just
number 9. Utah.
Anthony Black here.
Okay. We've talked a lot about him.
Yeah, we've already talked a ton about Anthony Black. Mainly you just got to draft players, right? Is Colin Sexton your guard of the future? He hasn't really proved himself to be a guard of the future. I forget what's going on with Jordan Clarkson. I don't remember if he has how long his contract is, what's going on with him, if he's a free. I don't really know off the top of my head. I can't remember that. But that's just your other guard option there. Those are your 2 guard options, right? I think what's up?
Yeah, I was just going to mention the player who was playing point guard, and we should remember this. This was on our Unsung Hoops. We shouted him out quite a bit, was Talen Horton-Tucker.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why I think Anthony Black would be a good fit there, is because we saw Talen Horton-Tucker do it, and he has the same physicals, not as great of a passing gift as Anthony Black. So I think that'd be a perfect fit.
Yeah, no, I like that too. Is that where you have him?
I have Anthony Black.
Yeah.
I had him at 5 just for this exercise.
Oh, okay. So you actually had him at 5?
Yeah, I had him at 5.
Okay, so who do you have here then?
I have Kobe Buffkin out of University of Michigan. A reach in some regard because one of the big time defensive guys is going to drop down to 10. But Kobe Buffkin fits the need that Utah has, like you mentioned with Anthony Black, a scorer, a facilitator. I think he has a lot of room to grow. He didn't really get a lot of spotlight in the early part of the year at University of Michigan, but second half of the year, I think it was when Jet Howard went down, he was tasked to do a lot more and became more of a focal point. Overall, I think they need a guard. It was between him and Case and Wallace, but I'm going to go with Kobe Buffkin there.
Yeah, speaking on Kobe, so obviously he went to the University of Michigan, and I had the pleasure of watching him in person when they played Michigan State. And from what I saw from him, he was sneaky athletic, man. No idea he could throw down like he could. No idea he was as tall as he was. Like, I had no idea anything about this guy. I just thought he was some shorter no name at Michigan. And he turned out this dude was a hooper, and I completely underestimated him. He was the one name I took away from that Big Ten season, which is how impressive he was to me. So I think that's solid there.
Yeah, I love Kobe Buffkin for that, and I think he's going to have a really good career. I think this is where you get to the part of the draft where you're drafting for someone who could be a starter for a long time, not necessarily more. And the goal is they get higher than that, but I think Kobe's one of those guys who easily could be in this league as a starting point guard. Yeah. Number 10. Did you say your pick for 9? Yeah, Anthony Black.
Yeah, Anthony Black.
I'm getting off task. Number 10, I have Taylor Hendricks, and he fell quite a bit for me. Didn't you have him at 7?
I had him at 7, yeah.
It all goes by fit. I don't think he fits well in Washington. I think Jarris falling from a surprise. Anthony Black pick at 5 puts Jarris at 7, which then allows Hendricks to go to 10 to probably the best fit in the top 10 for him, just due to being able to play off of Luka Doncic as a primary defender for wings and bigs, being able to hit the 3, along playing with Kyrie Irving. Like, he's a perfect off-ball guy. I think he has a really high floor. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I just think that's a good fit. He can go in and play meaningful basketball right away. They want to rebuild their big rotation, so why not start with Taylor Hendricks?
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
Yeah, so I have Derek Lively right here. And, I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. I think he is one of the better bigs, especially at this point in the draft. And they need bigs there. But this pick could also end up going in a trade somewhere else.
Yeah,
I could very well see that happen. I've heard some talks with Phoenix, obviously, and DeAndre Ayton. We've heard rumors of swapping picks with the Atlanta Hawks and getting either Clint Capella or a John Collins, flipping that in order for the Hawks to move up a little bit in the draft. Possibly have the chance to draft a Taylor Hendricks if he's there. But yeah, so I have Lively here, and I think that, just one of the better bigs that you can get at this point, and they need bigs down there in Dallas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly what I was saying with like rebuilding that big man rotation. I think he'd be a great fit to be able to play right away.
So in the top 10, I actually didn't include my favorite. Thinking about it after a while, I probably would switch him and maybe Anthony Black. And it's Cason Wallace.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I've done a decent amount of research on him. And I've watched a good amount of film on him. And some things I took away here, I wrote them in my notes. Good timing on the defensive end. Moves his feet well. Reads offenses on the defensive end. He reads the offenses very well. He averaged, I believe, 2 steals a game in college. And that's against the best athletes for his age, right? And that's also as a freshman in college, which is pretty impressive in the SEC, one of the best conferences in all basketball, at Kentucky, going against schools like Gonzaga, Michigan State, averaging 2 steals. Very good timing on the defensive end, especially for a guard. And I think that's something that's very useful in the NBA. On the offensive end, very crafty finisher, solid facilitator, athletic. And a comparison that I have with him is Tyrese Maxey at a more raw stage. Tyrese, as we know him now, quick, crafty. He's a good 3-point shooter now. And I think that's something where Cason needs to grow, is the 3-point shooting. But I think that his upside is absolutely insane. And I think if he does fall to one of those mid-lottery teams or lower lottery teams, or even if he falls out of the lottery, somebody's going to get really lucky with him.
Yeah, I think I've heard a lot of comparisons to Drew Holiday based on the defense.
The defense, yeah.
And looking at the top 10, even, I could see him going to Washington or Utah. I think I mocked him at 9 to Utah. I think whoever misses out on Anthony Black is going to want a guard. I think I said Kobe Buffkin, actually, but I could have.
Yeah, you said Kobe. Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of options for these 2 guards to go early in this draft. And I guess the last thing kicked my computer. The last thing on the docket today is Damian Lillard has potentially requested a trade. Did you see the tweet?
I saw it because you sent it to me. But Damian Lillard possibly requesting a trade. We had already talked about earlier in the draft, or when we were ranking our prospects or our mocks or whatever, we talked about the possibility a little bit maybe of trading that 3rd overall pick. And when you break down how great of a package you could get if you're Portland, if you think about what you can bring in if you were to trade Damian Lillard, get rid of Nurkic, and then you bring in a Scoot Henderson, even a Brandon Miller, but from what it sounds like, it's going to be Scoot. If somehow you could turn that, and obviously Dame's going to bring you in a good amount. Say he goes to Miami, he's probably going to bring you in a Tyler Hero, right? A Duncan Robinson, something like that. You're going to be set up pretty solid. And honestly, in my opinion, that route is going to set you up even better than what possibly trading that pick could be, unless you somehow get Zion and Zion can play 65 games.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just want to know how Shaedon Sharpe would do as a lead guy on a competitive team. We saw it last year. I really like Shaedon Sharpe. But imagine him next to Scoot Henderson. That would rival the Amen Thompson, Jalen Green backcourt, in my opinion.
What happens with Anthony Simons?
I think he gets moved. I think he's the oldest one of that bunch, and you kind of just move him for more assets, probably a wing.
Imagine the assets you get.
How what?
Imagine all the assets you're going to bring in if you move Dame, Simons, Nurkic. Don't re-sign Jeremy Grant. That's so much money.
Or sign and trade him to Detroit or something. No, you don't want Jeremy Grant?
I don't want Jeremy Grant back now.
See, I think in a Monty – that's a conversation for another day. I'll just say in a Monty system, I would hope it could work. But that's a lot of hope.
But I love Jeremy. But –
yeah.
Anyways, somehow we find our way back to Detroit Pistons talk all the time.
Yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to there needs to be a counter on the screen.
Yeah.
On the screen, not at the screen.
Shout out to the editor, whoever's editing this.
Yeah, that's me, but I'm not doing that. In looking at this tweet by Jack Settleman, it says breaking seven-time All-Star Damian Lillard has officially requested a trade. Per a well-placed source, Lillard cited his focus on competing for an NBA title and does not trust the Blazers' ability to build a championship-contending roster in his preferred timeline. I take this post with a grain of salt just because it's not like a big-time news breaker.
Right.
But I think you have to look at the history he's had. Someone pointed it out. It's on the screen now. I mean, he called out the Kevin Durant trade.
You're talking about the guy that reported this, right?
Yeah, the guy who reported the Damian Lillard news also reported beforehand about the Kevin Durant trade to Phoenix, D'Angelo Russell to the Lakers, Ben Simmons about sitting out, and just them wanting him to be gone, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I think that's kind of an easy tell from anybody. And then they have the James Harden news at the bottom right.
Right.
So I don't know what to believe. I'd like to believe he wants out.
Credible source. But
possible.
If you look back at what they have done to try and build around Dame already in the time they've had, it hasn't been anything. They had good runs. They had a run to the Western Conference Finals with CJ there, and they're still not able to build anything legitimate around Dame. And you bring in Zion Williamson or Brandon Ingram. Are those two enough with Nasir Little and the little bit of role players that they have out there? Is that enough to take down a Denver team who looked absolutely unstoppable, only lost 4 games in the playoffs? Is that enough to take down a LeBron James fighting for his last possible championship of his career and an Anthony Davis? Is that enough to take down a Warriors team who is 1 year removed from winning an NBA championship, or Phoenix who just got Bradley Beal?
Yeah.
They're sitting at a possible 6 or lower seed.
The only way I see them winning a championship is when Dame's in the twilight of his career, maybe a year or two from retiring, and is led by Scoot and Shaedon Sharpe. I don't think he's going to have a major impact on any sort of winning if he stays in Portland. As tough as that is to say, because I'm not a fan of people forming super teams.
Mm-hmm.
But with Damian Lillard and even with Bradley Beal, it kind of was like a come on. I mean, Carmelo Anthony, same sort of issue. I mean, he different because Damian wanted to stay for the city. Melo signed that huge contract in New York instead of going to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
That could have been huge because he could have won a chip. He had the opportunity.
Right.
But he didn't. So I just want to make sure Damian Lillard gets the credit he deserves at the end of the day. And him staying in Portland, like, yeah, that's cool, but in 20 years, people are just going to meme it.
I think people already are. I think people are starting to get a little. I mean, it's obviously his choice. He's got family there. If he wants to stay in Portland and just keep building on his resume in Portland, whatever his resume is in Portland, when Western Conference Finals appearance where he got swept by the Warriors. I mean, go ahead, all for him. But you just don't have. I don't know. It's something about him. Maybe not even. He wants to win, but it's weird because it almost seems like he doesn't, because he's just holding on to this, like, in my opinion, false hope that the Blazers are going to rebuild this perfect team around him, when it's obvious after all of these years, it is yet to happen. And the closest team that probably was, or the team that's closest to probably being able to do that, wasn't even that Western Conference Finals team. It was probably 2015 with Batum, LaMarcus Aldridge, Dame, CJ, like, Wesley Matthews, yeah. Like that squad.
Robin Lopez, yep.
Right, was low-key probably the closest he's ever been, and that was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't even consider
he was the youngster of that group.
Right. I don't consider that, what was it, 2018 or whatever run that he had to the Western Conference Finals. I don't even consider that even that close. He got swept, and there's no way he was going to win it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that can happen this offseason. And it's really going to start to take shape starting tomorrow or today, if you're listening, for the draft. I'm very excited. The draft always brings in a new crop of players, and it brings hope to every single franchise. Because even if you pick at 30, you're hoping that guy at 30 is good. If you pick at 42, you're hoping, hey, maybe this guy can help. If you're picking at 60, you're going to say, maybe it's a shot in the dark. Let's see what happens. Let's roll the dice here.
I mean, you can list out many players who have been picked at those later picks. In the 40s, Jokic. 60, Isaiah Thomas. Second round, you get Draymond Green or Jimmy Butler. Like, it's been done.
Yep. And I'm just excited to see what kind of careers are made from these guys. But we're running out of time. Let's wrap it up. Let the people know where they can find you.
Me personally?
Yeah, like... Not like your person, but like your social media.
Well, yeah, I didn't know if you meant as in
not
like
your
this
own
podcast. No, I mean, you can find me on all platforms as Hamilton Hoops, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, or not. I guess Facebook. I forgot I even have a little Facebook page that I run. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, TikTok. Yeah, all Hamilton Hoops.
Awesome. Well, fantastic having you here. Hope to have you on a ton more times as this series keeps going.
I appreciate you, brother.
Hey, peace out.
See you, dog.